All right, I've been wanting to get to this slide. This is a big part of the challenge you face with your young workforce. The Harvard Business Review said that 30% of employees in this country, on average, are engaged in their work. Do you know what that means? 70% are earning a paycheck, making a living. They're here like the Dunkin' Donuts, got to make the donuts. And yet, we want them to provide exceptional health care to the patients, to the people that you serve. So what you have to do is figure out how much that costs your organization to pay 70% of 5,000 people who aren't fully engaged. And you're never going to get everybody. I tell people there's 3 groups represented in every population. And the percentages you can play with, but there's 3 groups. Each of you fit into one of 3 categories. There's those of you in this room who have been leaders your entire life. You influence people around you. The essence of leadership is influence. You were an influential kid, you were an influential teenager, and you're influential today as an adult. Comes easy for you. People are different because you're around them. That's one group. Then there's a group of you in the middle that we call seaweed. Some of you are seaweed in this room. What does seaweed do? The current's this way, they're leaning this way. The current's this way, they're leaning this way. So some of you are seaweed. And then there's some of you in the room who we call cave people. Citizens against virtually everything. You know some cave people, don't you? Don't call any names. But you know some. These are the people that, if you could at the end of the day, and you can't because of taxes, and I know we've got some payroll people in here somewhere probably. You can't do this, but if you could, at the end of the day, when your people leave, you hand them a crisp $50 bill just to say thanks for doing a good job today. These K people would look at that $50 bill and go, good gosh, I needed 2 20s and a 10. They're going to complain no matter what. You're never going to make them happy. So your job as supervisors and managers, and especially as executives, is to engage those leaders so that they influence the seaweed. We're never going to get the cave people, but the seaweed is our opportunity. If you can change that, just think about it. If you could ever switch where you had 70% engaged and 30% disengaged, what would that do for the organization? And that's what you got to be working towards. So listen real carefully to this police officer's words. His words are very important.
If somebody ever comes around you talking to you about drugs, run away from them. You understand what I'm saying? Run away from them. And see, I got these guns that I want to talk to you guys about. I have a whole lot more to tell you. I don't have a whole lot of time. I got these guns. I have a gun on my side right here. Just this week, at the beginning of the week, a young boy, not even 16 years old, was killed because he was playing with a gun. And see, this is an unloaded gun. Right here, this is the gun. No, empty weapon. Empty weapon. This is a Glock 40. 50 Cent, Too Short, all of them talk about Glock 40. Okay, I'm the only one in this room professional enough that I know of to carry this Glock 40. I'm the only one.
Shot himself in the foot.
No, is everybody all right? You all right? Stop, this is walk. I got it. Yeah, I had an AD. Yeah, I'm here. Listen up, guys. But listen up. And I made a mistake. So listen to me. Guys, listen to me. Yeah, listen to me. See that how the accident happened? It can happen to you and you can be blown away. Okay? So guys, never play with guns. See how accidents happen? They happen. Okay, now I'll probably never ever be able to show guns again. But Brian, bring that other gun out, Brian. Brian. Yeah, Robbie, leave that right there. Leave that right there. Brian. I think he called it right now. Bring that other gun out. Hey, see this gun right here, guys? Listen. See this gun? Look. Hey, oh, it's empty. It's an empty weapon, guys. Don't listen. Robin, hey, Robin, just keep my stuff.
Okay, now, let me preface my remarks by saying this first. I don't think it's funny that he shot himself in the foot. However, I think it's extremely humorous in what he said before he shot himself in the foot. I'm the only one in this room professional enough that I know of to carry a Glock 40. Boom! Shot himself in the foot. Now, look what it says on the back of his t-shirt. This is not an entry-level police officer. This is what I would call an elite officer. Think about how many hours of gun safety training this guy's had, how many hours of range time this guy's had. I didn't know it till recently. One of my clients is the city of Shreveport, Louisiana, and I was there doing some training, and I kept hearing pow, 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 pow. And I was at their police and fire academy, and I asked one of the guys on a break, I said, what is that? He goes, we've got an indoor firing range. And he took me, he said, you want to see it? I said, sure. He took me down the hall, and we went into this big firing range on the at the indoor edge of the building, just like one that you'd see on TV. Well, and then he started to show me these different marks on the cleaning table, on the wall where the insulation is, where people had accidentally discharged weapons over the years. And he said the Glock 40 is actually one of the easiest guns to have an accidental discharge because there's no safety on it. And what I tell you is, no matter how you may have messed up in the past as a supervisor, if you're not doing everything just exactly right, give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. This guy lost his career. I got this video in 2005. I didn't know if it was real, so I didn't use it. It was about a year later. This predates YouTube, where I saw this guy on one of the news channels because he's suing the company that leaked the video. This is real. Any of us can make a mistake. Any of us can fail. It's our response to adversity that matters. It's our response to failure that matters. Don't put yourself as a supervisor, as a manager on this pedestal to think that you've got to be perfect. You don't. And one of the ways you humble yourself to this young generation is to admit it. Say, hey, I don't get it right all the time. To role model that. That, hey, I'm just as human as the rest of you. I fail just like you do. And that will help really endear you to that generation. Because they're out there trying to figure it out. They're trying to learn. They want to get better. So you think about what the workplace is going to look like in the next 10 years. The end of the 40-hour work week. That's a potential reality from a lot of research. Why 40 hours? Where did that come from? And the young generation thinks that's kind of dumb anyway. Sometimes it might be 30, sometimes it may be 60, depending on the demand. But where did 40 come from? And why are we hung up on 40? Flexible workplace. If you can be flexible in your department, that's something that you need to really examine. A lot of young mothers, and especially hospitals, because who do you employ mostly? Yeah, someone was telling me on a break that even by the year 2020, there'll be even more female doctors. So you've already got most of the nurses, and now you're going to have most of the doctors. And understanding that life outside of work is the most important, is what gets you respected. I had a guy in one of my classes say that his boss told him that he couldn't leave early to go to his son's football game out of town. He's a senior. You don't get these moments back because his boss wouldn't let him go when he had a son in school. I said, where does that come from? This was probably some of the best advice I ever received. I worked at a steel mill. I was one of the youngest managers at the steel mill. And they said, being fast-tracked to be one of the youngest vice presidents at that steel mill. Well, this older guy who I would call one of my mentors comes in my office not long after I was promoted to manager, and he shuts the door. And he sits down. I didn't ask him to sit down. He sat down. He said, "I'm going to give you some advice, young man." And he looked me square in the eye and he says, "Don't you give up your life for this organization. Don't you give that up. Because I promise you, when you get ready to retire, nobody's going to remember the sacrifice that you made. But your children are going to remember every event that you missed because you were at work." Now, I can't make everything. I miss things. But I try to make everything that I can. And I couldn't imagine working for someone who didn't understand that, who didn't support me in that. You know, work is important. Doing what you do is special. Doing what you do for the community is special. But we got to remember, people have lives outside of work too. And that, if people are balanced, this was a CEO of a hospital told me, I kept using the word balanced. Got to be balanced. She said, "John, I don't think that word best fits our hospital." I said, "Really?" She goes, "I've got a hospital full of moms. And that mom cannot leave that sick child at home in her mind no more than she can leave that sick patient at the hospital when she leaves. They're going to be on her mind." She said, "A better word for us is blended lifestyle." I said, "Wow, I like that." Do you think that better fits the hospital environment? You've got to understand that, hey, it's blended. It's not one or the other. You can't stop one thing and start another mentally. It's both. You may be an awesome clinical director, but you're an awesome mom too. You're both. Think about the talent strategy. And this does not have to be something that's global. If it's not happening on a global standpoint for your organization, think about it in your own department. What I tell supervisors and managers, the only way that you can have sanity is to control what you can control, influence what you can't. And there's no reason that you can't really start thinking about talent in your own department and looking at what's it going to look like in 5 years. What do you need to do to get to where you want to go with your people? And think about people that are going to come after your best talent. Who's going to come take them? And if you're not getting better, then your people may want to leave anyway. They want to be a part of something that's good, that they associate as positive. 10% of people seek formal learning. It's the reason that we have to have continuing education units in most professional jobs, because most people aren't going to go look for those opportunities. Now, it doesn't mean people don't want to learn, but most people want to learn organically. And what does that mean? Learn how? Learn by living life. Yeah, I want to learn. Oh, but I don't want to go to a workshop. No, I ain't got time for that. So we have to really, really work at creating what I call the leading learner. You have to role model learning for your people to do it. You have to be continually sharpening your own axe so that your people understand that that's how you get where you want to go in this organization, is by learning yourself. If you role model it at the top, then people see that as an expectation at the bottom. But you know what happens mostly in reverse? When I go into an organization, guess who gets trained first? The people at the bottom. We don't need that at the top. I was doing a presentation for an executive team at a company, and the CEO, I don't always work with every company. I don't always jive or fit with every organization. But here's what the CEO, I started talking about some of the things that we're talking about today, and you know what he told me? In front of his vice presidents, he said, "Let me tell you something." He said, "If these guys in this room don't already know how to communicate, if they don't know how to hold people accountable, if they don't know how to build trust, well, by gosh, they shouldn't be in the jobs that they're in." What did he just let me know real quickly? They already knew everything. They got it all figured out. Well, that's not going to work with this next generation. We're going to have to show them that, hey, we're learning just like you are. We're getting better at this. We're improving. If we're sharpening our own axe, we expect you to sharpen your axe too. The value dilution effect. I love going into organizations and seeing something like this. Dignity, service, excellence, justice. Those your core values? What I tell companies is writing them down on a poster doesn't make them real. The only way a value works is when you live those values. You role model those values. Paper doesn't mean anything. You know, putting them on a card and keeping them in your pocket doesn't mean anything. They have to be role modeled. And what happens in most organizations is what I call the value dilution effect. I'll give you an example. Salesman works the same general territory on a regular basis. He decides he's going to stop at McDonald's to get a cup of coffee. And instead of going to the drive-thru, he wants to stretch his legs a little bit. So he decides he's going to go in. He walks into the restaurant and walks up to the counter. He's looking up at the menu out of habit, really more than anything, because he already knows what he wants. And he's going, And the young man behind the counter walks up to the counter and goes, "Yes, sir, can I help you?" He goes, "Yeah, give me a small cup of coffee, but if you would, put it in a little bit larger cup." Well, here's what the young man behind the counter does. He can't find the button for that. He goes, "You want a what?" He goes, "Look, I'm driving and I want a small cup of coffee, but put it in a larger cup so that there's extra room in the top of the cup." Well, he does it again. So then he calls the assistant manager over there. "Hey, come here. Tell him what you want." By this time, the sales guy's getting frustrated. He said, "Look, guys, I'm not trying to be difficult, okay?" He goes, "I'm on the road. I want a small cup of coffee, but I want it in a larger cup." Well, here's what the assistant manager does. He can't find the button either. But ding, 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 the light goes on above his head. He said, "Yes, sir, I can do that, but I'll have to what?" Well, now the guy gets upset. He goes, "Look, guys, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I don't want a medium cup. I want a small cup. Just put it in a larger cup." Here's the manager's response. "You don't understand, sir. If my cup count is off at the end of my shift, I get in trouble. I'll have to charge you for the medium cup." Well, the guy says, "I tell you what, you keep your cup and your coffee too. And that's the last time I'll ever set foot in this McDonald's again." Now, you think about the impact of that story. Any of you soccer fans in here? Soccer fans, World Cup. The World Cup. If you don't remember this, you may remember it when I say it. McDonald's had their golden arches on the scoreboard of that World Cup. What do you think that cost McDonald's? They were the only advertiser on that clock, on that scoreboard. A lot. There is no McDonald's executive that I know, no franchise owner that I know, who would ever lose a customer over the price difference between a small and a medium cup. But what did those employees hear was important? Cup count. Not the customer, cup count. So those values, whatever they tend to be, they've got to be lived every day so that people know how to behave. Decision making is easy when values are clear. Let me say that again. Decision making is easy when values are clear. If people know the right decision to make, if it's the advocate for the patient or whatever, we will make the right decision if we see those values role modeled. It's when we don't know that we go back to what we think is going to cause us the least amount of pain. So everything that you try to do as an organization, and as it filters through the organization, it gets diluted. And what we have to do is continually work at recommunicating those ideas to people so that they know how to behave, they know how to act. Only in Texas. I caught her away from the computer, I'm sorry. You better be careful. Everybody's packing in Texas, right? I say that in jest, but you should see how funny it is. I'm so at home in Texas. This is where I grew up. But when I make conversation in California, not to knock you Californians if you're in the room, or the Northeast, Connecticut, New York, I remember when my older son was 10 years old, I got him a .243 deer rifle. And I think I was in Connecticut giving a speech, and I mentioned the .243, and a guy comes to me after class, he goes, "You mean you gave a 10-year-old a .243 rifle?" He was upset about it. In Texas, you tell someone you gave them a .243, why'd you wait so long? Such a different culture. So here's my summary. The workplace is changing right now. We're losing some amazing baby boomers. And I don't want to discredit how important the baby boomers are. They're taking so many years of experience, so many real-world application of what we're talking about with them. And if we're not debriefing, if we're not downloading, if we're not trying to gather as much of that information as we can, we're burning money. You're literally burning a pile of money. Because they're going to take that with them. And if we don't at least ask for it, we don't deserve it in the first place. And the Generation Yers. Don't let the negative side of Generation Y influence you to throw out the entire generation. There are some really brilliant young Generation Yers that are going to leave what I think is going to be an indelible mark on this organization. You got some very talented young people. I've met some already on breaks, some pretty powerful, pretty amazing young people who are in positions of authority here. Don't let the few that are bad influence you to think that that's a generational thing, because whatever you think about them, they're the future anyway. They're going to be the ones making decisions in 10 years about this hospital and all of your departments. And think about ways to get your people engaged. Think about that 30-70 that I shared with you. Even if you make it 50-50 or 60-40, you're still better than you are today. Make them feel important. And think about who's coming after your talent. I've already met some people today that I thought, man, if I had a company that was looking for one, that person would be a good person, people are going to come after your best and brightest talent. They're going to come take them. So you've got to be proactively thinking about, how am I going to keep them? What am I going to do to keep them from leaving when they decide to get, or when someone gives them another offer? And you think about this, every one of you probably has that one person on your team today. And if you don't, I feel very sorry for you. But every one of you probably have that one person on your team that if they gave you notice today, it'd be a pretty bad day. You'd be, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And make learning the core of your business strategy. In other words, if you role model that, if you say, hey, I'm learning, and I want you to learn as well. If you make information and learning a big part of the strategy here at this organization, you're going to be so much more attractive than other organizations. And understand that values are things that you have to role model every day. We call them key moments. Every day a key moment occurs with you and your team, and you have the ability to act the way that's going to support the value or that's going to contradict the value. And sometimes those are difficult. It could be, patient care, could be safety, could be quality. You acting in the way that supports the value that you want to represent as an organization is one of your main functions as a leader. Leading those values. Being the one that steps up and says, no, we're not going to do that. Or think about in my McDonald's coffee example, if the owner would have been there and said, hey guys, come here. Hey, we don't want to lose a customer over the fraction of a penny difference between the cost of these two cups. If I'm ever not here, and I'm not here to help you make this decision, always err on getting that customer to come back. Always make that decision that way. If you got to explain at the end of the day why your cup count is off, explain it. But don't lose a customer over something so small. But that person wasn't there to make that call, and they lost a customer. I want to thank you for letting me be a part of your lives. I am honored, I'm humbled, I'm impressed with meeting so many good leaders. I've talked to a lot of you on breaks. And, my call to action for you, I guess it's your 30, 60, 90 thing. is you have to figure out what you're going to do in your department, your area of control, to attract and keep the best of that generation. And it may be something very large that you have to do, or it may be something very small. And you may already be doing it. But one of the ways you can find out is by talking to your people. What do you like about this job? What would cause you to leave? What keeps you here? Would you recommend this job to your friends? One of the amazing things about Lubbock, and I don't know what it is, I've talked to several people when I came in, talked to people today, there's something special about this place. People come here to go to school and stay here. Well, make your hospital the same way. Make this place the preferred employer of choice. I heard a number, and it surprised me. One of you made a comment this morning and said 35% market share. Is that real? Is that a real number? Think about it. If you've got the best nurses, the best doctors, the best technicians, the best therapists, the best custodial team, what do you think that would do to that 35%? How might that improve that 35%? Thank you very much.